Welcome back to Let's Play .hack GU, Volume 1. Logging out, we find that we have 4 new emails. So let's take a look. Now this is where our mail station, the one on the far left, is our actual mail. The second one is for greeting cards, which I'll get into later when we actually get some of them. And the far right lists everyone whose member address we have. We have Adelie, Syllabus, and Gaspard right now. The little red dot there that you see up in the corner shows that character's affection rating. Now, since we've just met Adelie, really, that's as low as it'll go. Though we've gone on some adventure now with Syllabus and Gaspard, so those are a little bit higher. On top of that, there's the little box down below that actually shows a little bit about that character. I'm under the impression that that's something that character wrote themselves, so that's what Adelie wants to share with everyone. And Syllabus, admittedly, he's not really anything special in these games, but he does give a good grounding for your average character. Because they did go a little bit over the top with all the other characters, making them these big elaborate things that, complicated stories and all that fun stuff. And it doesn't seem natural, really. But Syllabus actually gives us a good footing for... This is just your average player. This is the kind of thing that an average player has to deal with, especially if an average character were tossed into the fray of everything that we're dealing with. And then Gaspard, who is, well, Gaspard. But we have more mails, so let's take a look at this. We have 4, in fact. We have 2 from Syllabus, 1 from Gaspard, 1 from Pi. A bit of a warning from Pi. This is actually going into the email chain with Pi here. Now, as far as I could not find anything anywhere that actually gave a nice list of how to respond to what emails. Personally, I don't even remember if it matters. I think they will respond and continue the chain anyway, even if you make an incorrect choice. However, if you make the correct choice, you will get some affection out of it and raise your affection with that character. The only real guide I've found pretty much just said, don't be a jerk, so... Well, the second one's a little, neither of them are terribly kind, but I think this one is a little better off, so let's go with that one. Then 1 from Gaspard. We'll get to respond with that with, let's see here. Well, that's not nice. Well, better than the other one. 1 from Syllabus for pretty much the same thing. This one asks a question, but it's also kind of, I don't care about you, let's talk about me. So this one, I don't know, let's go with this one, why not? And then finally, 1 from Syllabus. Now the previous 3 were from the email chains, so to say. From Syllabus here, we actually have a little bit of information. He wants to invite us to go on a quest. So let's go on a quest with him. Now, seeing as this is one of the first times that we can look around the desktop here, granted we could look through it once before, but for storyline purposes I kept going anyway, so let's take a look at what we have here. We have news capture, and there are a whole lot of interesting little news things here. You can actually read about what's going on in the world. It's really nice. They did the same thing with the first .hack games, and it's really nice that they went to this trouble, because it really fleshes out the world for what's going on outside of just this little game. And a lot of this is completely irrelevant. A lot of this has nothing to do with anything. It's just some really interesting news that sets the scene, so to say. Now, if you're playing through this game on your own, I would wholeheartedly suggest that you actually read through all of this. For the sake of the viewer's sanity, I'm not going to. I'll read through it all off screen. If something strikes my fancy, then maybe I'll look into it. Let's see here. Technology, art, where they're actually talking about the new M2D micro monocle display, which is 49,000 yen. Nice. But this is the new display. Even in the first game, they talked about kind of a headset that you'd play games and such on. So this is the next one up. Perhaps the most important thing out of the news here is Online Jack. This is a interesting little news show they give you every now and then, starring Salvador Aihara, and I will be splicing that in when I see necessary. I won't force you to sit through it right now. That's news capture, though. And there is the community forum, where there's talk about a couple things here. There's talk about the world, obviously. Now, if memory, a lot of this, once again, it really fleshes out the world, and you actually get to talk, see what other characters are talking about. Like right here, they're talking about whether or not the PK system is even a good idea in the first place. And admittedly, the PKing has gotten way too bad recently. So maybe it's time they do something about it. We have one down here talking about, one guy wants to know where to get an Ulm shell. And someone responds with a keyword saying that you can get them here. And now we can go there and get them too. Now, there's also some talk about the Epitaph of Twilight, which the original world was based on. Now, the Epitaph plays much less a role in this game than the other one, but there is still a decent amount of talk here about it, and it's all kind of, again, it's neat stuff. One guy mentioning that he misses R1, which is the original 4 games. And the discussion here pretty much goes down to saying that R2 is indeed a very different game than R1 was. So a lot of people actually use the transition to kick the habit, so to speak. Let's see, there's also some discussion on Crimson VS, which here on the main screen, you go one to the right, there's Crimson VS. Now, it is disabled right now. I don't remember if it's enabled later in this game or the beginning of the second game. I think it's the beginning of the second game. So we won't see anything about Crimson VS for a while, but it's a nifty little card game. It's actually kind of fun to toy around with. So there's some discussion here about Crimson VS. Let's see here. Expecting results, ceasing service. Just people asking about it, wants to know when it's going to show up, whatnot. Some discussion about news. Rumors, which these rumors are actually a little more interesting. There is, let's see here, looking for Tan. Now, for those of you who have seen Dot Hack Roots, Tan was a very, very large guild that existed during Dot Hack Roots that actually controlled a great portion of the in-game market. So at one point during the series, Tan disbanded and completely turned the market upside down when it happened. Let's see, the Forest of Pain is something else kind of interesting here. The Forest of Pain was the event that Haseo went to. He was looking to become stronger, to fight against Tri-Edge, to try and get Shino back. And when the Forest of Pain event came around, he went in, and he was one of 2 people to come out the other end of the forest alive, and actually complete the event. This was also the event that, I forget her name, I spliced in the clip at in the previous update of the one girl saying that this was the place that Haseo went to where he stopped being Haseo. And it wasn't until he was data drained by Tri-Edge that he actually became himself again. Let's see here. The Urban Legend, Mystery of the World. Some a little bit to talk about Tri-Edge, but it's all just kind of interesting stuff. Like, if you come across Tri-Edge, you get put into a coma. Talk about a little girl in the hall. If you go to the Hullsgrund Cathedral, that's hidden forbidden holy ground, you can hear a girl crying. Let's see here. Also, these rumors say that a girl wearing something like a white nightgown will sometimes appear before your very eyes. Now, these are, granted, very exaggerated rumors, but a girl in a white nightgown in hidden forbidden holy ground. That sounds to me like aura. A little present for those of you who have seen the first games. Let's see here. These are just rules of the board. Probably the coolest section out of this forum, though, is Apkallu here. Which, Apkallu, let's see here, Apkallu is the name of a new Babylonian or a new Assyrian mythology or something like that. I don't have the details. I know it's also an enemy in Final Fantasy XI that looks like a little cross between a bird and a penguin. Well, granted, a penguin is a bird, but you get the idea. But this is an art board, where people come in here and post artwork that they've drawn. And you can download these and use them as your wallpaper. Now, not all of these have anything to do with you. A lot of these are, again, it's really neat because it fleshes out the world and shows just how other people experience things. Now, I might as well show off all of these. This one here is one of my favorites, actually. Oh, look at that, he's befriending a Chim Chim. And on top of that, a lot of these actually show different levels of artistic skill. Completely different artistic styles. I mean, it really reflects a whole community of people. Some people are exceptional artists. Some people draw some pretty darn awesome things. Some people, not so much. Exotic guy! I love that one. Ah, well. Let's see here. Okay, we got that one. We got Chim Soccer. And finally, let's see here. We have... That is a beautiful drawing right there. And the people usually post these stories with them as well, and again, it really helps flesh out the world. I mean, the guy who drew this posts this big story about how it's the first time he logged in, he just met these other guys, and they went off on this glorious adventure, the best time he'd ever had to even meet some people like this. I mean, it's some really neat stuff. And then, of course, there's this guy, which, I mean, you look at it, sure, it's not the best artwork in the world, but it actually reminds me a little bit of Fist of the North Star for whatever silly reason. Or maybe Captain Harlock or something. That one's kind of neat, too. So yeah, there's that. I'm going to be reading through a great deal of this off-screen. If I see anything interesting, I'll come in and show everybody. Now, I say we change our background image because we need to see something a little better than Ultimate. So, let's use this one as our background because, you know, sometimes Haseo just needs to calm down. Well, we've checked everything we can, so let's head on into the world. Now, of course, logging into the world, you have two more options. You can go to the official, the world site, and the official forum. Now, the Medic Troupe. It's a guild run by a dude named Governor Tadashi. And the whole point of the guild is that they run around and they cure people and do nifty stuff and help people out and stuff. And it's actually kind of neat because the Medic Troupe was actually kind of started in .Hack Root by Tabby, of all people. It was actually Tabby, Seisaku, and I think it was Hideo? But they actually created it ages past, and Tabby kind of stepped back, but it was Seisaku then went and found Governor Tadashi to run this whole thing that really wanted to get into it. So, Governor Tadashi now is running the whole thing, and first in line is Heel Red, which is Private Seisaku. So, an actually feasibly important character straight from .hack roots. Let's see here, thread and response, there's some guy that doesn't know how boards work, guy that talks about the different elementals, or the, not element, and elementals, the different elements. We have fire, water, wind, earth, light, and dark, though they say here light and dark hasn't actually been implemented yet. But then someone else actually comes in and adds that there's also physical, magical, and neutral. Let's see here, a monster that runs away, it's a lucky animal, we'll actually see a little bit more of them later. A little talk about Chim Chims, a guy who's going on and on about how this really dark guy that PK'd him, that apparently looked a lot like him. And someone mentions that it's not a PC, it's actually a monster. Where is it? There we are. It was a doppelganger. Now, doppelgangers will scare the crap out of you if you're not expecting them. They're essentially a dark, shadowy version of yourself that spawns on fields if you spend too much time on the field, and they will destroy you something fierce. Now, let's hear playing in a group. There's some keywords and such in here somewhere, and I forget where they are, so pardon me for a moment while I actually look through and try to find some. Maybe it was under solo. Yeah, I'm thinking it was under the solo. One guy wants to know a little bit more about soloing. Because I know somewhere in here somebody gives him some decent keywords. Some keywords, gives him some there we are. And there's the actual words, some words used to make some decent areas, so there's that. Monster's Field of Vision, which is one guy kind of complaining about how Monster saw him. And that wasn't how it worked. Can't go to an area. Though it says can't go to an area, I think it's that he's more complaining about how he can't get any decent items. Dang, I was hoping for some more keywords in there. Map's gone! Some guy that's an idiot and turned off his map, and you hit select to turn it back on again. To the official site then, one last thing before we finally get on. Again, this is how much effort they put into really making this a well-rounded world. I've wasted a whole video now just talking about this crap. Let's see here, the world talks a little bit about the world. Chaos Gate gives a lot of the background for the world. Talks about the steam bikes and the steam alchemy and all kinds of really neat stuff in here. Some history, where if you take the time to read through this, this actually gives the whole entire backstory for the world. Really good read, and there's some really interesting stuff in here. And it explains a lot of things that you see, like even in that field area that I mentioned last time, that big mechanical contraption that was off in the horizon. It explains what that is somewhere in here. Now, more to our intention, there are different player characters. Specifically, there are humans, and there are beast types. In fact, of the beast types, there are 3 different beast types. There are these really large, powerful ones, there are the slightly more human-shaped ones, and then there are the short, chunky ones like Gaspard. Let's see here, factions. Once again, that's not terribly important for us, but it's interesting to read. Threats talks about all the different kinds of monsters. Now, jobs. This is something I actually wanted to stop and talk about some. Now, these are all the different jobs in the games, and we'll probably be getting most of them in our party at one time or another. And this is kind of one of the complaints that I have about this game, because in the first 4 games, the jobs weren't really that favorable for an MMO, but it worked very well for the games, because it was simulating an MMO, but it wasn't actually an MMO. This game, on the other hand, they decided to make the races better represent what would work well in an actual MMO, which is fine, but it works worse for a solo game such as .hack.GU. And you'll notice for one reason for that is in an MMO, the maximum party size is generally 4 or 5 or even 6. You could put a lot of people in your party. And that's to represent all the different roles that can be played. So let's talk about some of these here. You have the Twin Blade, which is your average, well-rounded character. They can do a little bit of everything. Rapid attacks. Blade Brandier is kind of the same, uses a sword though, still kind of well-rounded. Edge Punisher is much more offensive-based, so they're kind of more your tank types. They, well, maybe not your tank types, but they will hit and they will hit hard. But they really do very little in the way of magic. The Lord Partisan is a spear user who's much more so your tank. They can take a beating, and they do some decent damage at the same time. Then there's the Tribal Grappler, which, once again, good melee damage, quick hits, lower defense but higher HP, which kind of comes with the whole monk territory. The Flick Reaper, which the Flick Reaper, sadly, we don't get a Flick Reaper, a proper Flick Reaper in our party until, like, the 3rd game, so that saddens me a little. The Flick Reapers are actually pretty neat. Their attacks are based on close range but area attacks, so they can rush in and hit like 18 enemies at once. Then there's the Steam Gunner, which is a long-range attack. Now, the Steam Gunner, it's a very interesting idea, but it's also a class that I will never use. Given the opportunity, I will never have a Steam Gunner in my group. Because, as what Haseo is actually an Adept Rogue, which is the next one down, but due to just the mechanics behind how battles are handled, the battle system, and possibly even Haseo as a whole, is based more on offense. So you can certainly still sit back and cast your magic and your cures and do what you always could. It just seems much more focused on offense. As such, I tend to play the game a little recklessly. Strictly going in with melee. Now, in that regard, I need someone to heal me, because I'm probably not going to be doing that much myself. So I'm going to keep somebody that can heal me in the party. Now, that's 2 of my 3 party members. Now, I can put a 3rd person in, and I want that 3rd person to be a melee, so I'm not the only one facing down these 14 enemies myself. As such, a Steam Gunner being long-range damage, if I have a Steam Gunner in my group, I'm the only one beating on the enemies. I'm the only one really distracting them. I'm the tank, essentially. So, I'm never going to have a Steam Gunner in my party if I can help it. Then there's the Adept Rogue, which the Adept Rogue is actually... you can equip various weapons, though right away you can't. You actually unlock the ability to unlock various weapons. Right now, since Haseo has been reinitialized, all he has is Twin Blades. You could say this is kind of the, Jack of all trades, master of none. They're very adaptable, but if you want a specific role, there are better jobs for it. Then there's the Harvest Cleric, which is your first aid, and your Shadow Warlock, which is your... this is what Gaspard is, actually. It's essentially your magic damage. Now, I like the first 4 games because they combined these 2, so if I found an enemy that you needed to hit with magic, I've got somebody, but I've also got somebody that can cure. Now, granted, the Shadow Warlock can do a little bit of curing here and there, but I really just prefer having a Harvest Cleric. And then there is the Macabre Dancer, which, once again, we don't get a Macabre Dancer for a very long time, and they focus more on status effects and whatnot, so I tend to not really use that much myself anyway. Now, if they had extended the party so you could have 4 people in your party at once, there are a lot of classes in here that I would use a lot more than I do. But that said, that's a pretty elaborate discussion there, and whole lot of stuff here to read up on. Now that I've essentially spent an entire video on this whole mess, let's go in and start the next video actually getting to work on something.